Good evening. We're going to get started. Thank you all so much for being here. I am Ricky Levine, and for 2 more days I'm the Executive Director of the Holland Museum. So thank you for joining us in this next program in our long celebration of 150 years of the Cappon House. I'd like to acknowledge the support we get from the Michigan Arts and Culture Council and the National Endowment for the Arts for all of our programs. Before we begin, would you please silence your phones? And allow me to just take a moment to share some information about programs and events that are coming up at the museum. We currently have 2 exhibits on display that continue our Cappon 150th celebration. In the lobby, you can explore authentically Victorian reflecting on the Cappon House restoration. And this exhibition focuses on the various architectural projects involved in restoring the 1874 historic home to its 1902 appearance. And in August, this exhibition will be moved into the Visitor Center, which is part of the Cappon House property, to be part of our permanent education installation about the house and the Cappon family. The second exhibit is in the Focus Gallery, and it's called A Stitch in Time, Lavina Cappon's Tulip Time Legacy. And this celebrates Lavina Cappon, who is one of Isaac Cappon's daughter, and her unique aesthetic of tulip time through strict dress protocol. And before Lavina's involvement in tulip time, the costumes were anything but authentic, and we'll see an example of that in the gallery. And it's because of her dedication and the costumes that they are still authentic to this day. So the exhibition features authentic tulip time costumes from the collection of Wendy Branderhorst and the Holland Museum. So we're in summertime, although it feels a little cool out there for summer, but it is in full swing, and that means our walking tours are offered every Wednesday evening through August 14th. Next Wednesday is the historic Holland Architecture Tour. The others in the series are the public art and the Holland Fire Walks. Information on dates, tour topics, prices, and how to register are on our website, hollandmuseum.org. The annual old-fashioned ice cream social will be at the Cappon House on July 13th, and there will be free ice cream, yard games, art activities, and historic demonstrations, which is new this year for this event. Again, all celebrating the 150th year of the Cappon House. We're also offering afternoon tea at the Cappons, and that'll be held on July 27th. There'll be an assortment of finger sandwiches and sweet treats catered by Mother Italian Kitchen on the lawn of the Cappon House. And you will get to meet members of the Cappon family, I'm going to do that in quotes, and the household with reenactments by the Holland Community Theater and some other volunteers. The Holland Garden Club will be present, and they will tour the gardens and help guests create a Victorian floral keepsake. You must register for that event by Monday, July 22nd. There is a limited capacity. We're always looking for our community to get more engaged with the museum. Please consider being a volunteer. We have some of our volunteers here this evening. There's something for every interest and availability, or I should say, you can become a member. A family membership pays for itself in 2 visits, and they can be used as gifts all year long. And then donate. We're a 501c3 organization, which means we depend on the kindness of our strangers, or strange community members, whichever way you want to look at it. And right now we have a special through June 30th, so literally just a few more days. We have a great fundraising opportunity. There's some members of the community who have stepped up with a $35,000 matching gift, which means every dollar we raise up to $35,000, they will match. And it's a significant way for us to fill our coffers a little bit before the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. Donations may be made on the website, or you may speak with me directly, and please help us take advantage of this incredible gift. As we do before all of our programs, I would like to take a moment to honor the land that the Holland Museum properties occupy. The Holland area surrounds Lake Makatawa, ancestrally known to the Potawatomi, Dawa, and Peoria nations as Metagogami or Black Lake. Each nation has their own rich cultural traditions and beliefs that still survive today. We, the Holland Museum, acknowledge that this land is sacred, and we commit to honoring the land and the indigenous peoples who have stewarded it for generations through continuing education, partnerships, and self-reflection. Thank you. So before I introduce our speaker, I would like to ask you to please take a moment. There are evaluation forms on most, if not all, of the chairs, to fill one out at the end of the program. We appreciate your feedback. It helps us continue the work we're doing and get ideas for other programs and to grow them. So Clare Heyboer is a Holland Museum Board Member and currently serves as chairman of the Collections Committee. He was also the project manager of the Pere Marquette Caboose restoration project, and if you have not seen it, it's at the Cappons Transportation Center. It's a fabulous exhibit, and it's all due to this man that is as beautiful and effective as it is. During his career in the furniture industry, Clare designed reproduction furniture for several projects, including the Oval offices in the Gerald R and Ronald Reagan Presidential Museums, a custom-built Victorian Wooton Desk, the historical furniture for Michigan's oldest operating schoolhouse in Glen, and an inlaid 15-foot diameter conference table sent to Kuwait. Clare enjoys researching, writing, and lecturing on historical topics. Some of his varied subjects have included the history of Limbert Furniture, the 1926 visit of the convict ship to Holland, trains, and the Old Wing Mission Project. Please welcome museum friend, supporter, and board member, Clare Heyboer.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. Let's hear.
Get your feet in front of that. Yes, please.
We're good? Okay. To talk about the Cappon family, I'd really like to start talking about the 19th century highlights that really shaped the Cappon family and who they became and what events brought them here and brought them the success that they had. So the 19th century was an extraordinarily interesting time for the United States. It often was called the Golden Age, and for the Cappon family, I think that certainly would be true. Part of the Golden Age was growing immigration. In 1865, right after the Civil War, the city of New York, which was the largest city in the U.S. at that time, had 1 million people in population. The immigration into this country exceeded 20 million people during the Golden Age. So you can see there's an extreme number of people that were coming in. It was promoted as the American dream. Many, many peasants from Europe were enticed by the golden streets, all the streets in America were paved with gold. Well, and that's mainly who came, were the peasants from Russia, Ireland, Germany, mostly European countries. In the latter half of the 19th century, we saw more Asians and Mexican immigrants coming into the country. The Golden Age was also a time for rapidly growing Protestant denomination. It was, it grew very rapidly. And these denominations would go on and build colleges and universities throughout the country, and they would expand through missionaries, both in the U.S. and abroad, to promote the Protestant ideals. Childhood education was also a key factor in the Golden Age. At this time, it became a universal passage for every child to go to school. They finally realized that education is the way to success. And so they made it universally accepted that every child had to go to school. And so these were all ideals that were perfect for the Cappon family. As a matter of fact, many of your ancestors probably came to this country within that time frame. The Cappon family came in 1847, so they were right in the middle of all this. But I'm sure that most of your families, maybe not all, but many, were part of that 20 million influx of immigration. So there are a lot of strong religious beliefs and values that dominated the social life. It was also called the Industrial Era. From the years 1860 to 1890, 500,000 patents had been issued for new products. It was just an explosion of all types of innovation. And it drastically changed this country from an agricultural society to an industrial society. Part of the main reasons for that were a major growth in railroads. That was really the #1 industry during this time in this country. 1869, we saw the Transcontinental Railroad connect east and west. That has been continually worked on during the Civil War. It finally happened, came together in 1869. So now you could go from New York to California in 6 days, where before it had to take months. Steel manufacturing was also perfected during this time, which led to all these innovations that we were able to develop. And it also assisted in the railroad, because now you had rails that would actually hold up and support the railroad industry. The railroad industry was just so huge, because now you could move products across the country, you could move people across the country, livestock. It was just tremendous. Another huge innovation during this period was the telegraph and telephone. Things we take for granted today. First the telegraph, and then the telephone was perfected in 1876. That sounds kind of late in my time period, but 1876, the first practical telephone was in place, and it rapidly expanded. The Cappons were one of the first families in Holland to have a telephone, so they were really on the cutting edge of all these developments that were taking place. And then, of course, 1879, Thomas Edison perfected the light bulb. And again, what a tremendous impact electricity had for everyone, especially in the industrial world. You could now light a factory, you could power equipment. It drastically changed everything. So with all the advancements in manufacturing technology, along came the idea of mass production and interchangeable parts and the assembly line. So these are all new concepts. Even just building factories was kind of a new idea within itself. And so you didn't need a skilled labor force if you have an assembly line. We have all these immigrants coming in, and especially here in West Michigan, we have all these Dutch and Polish immigrants coming in. Most of these people that were coming were peasants, and that's kind of true throughout the whole country, and this is true for other factories and businesses as well. You didn't really need a skilled labor force because you now had this assembly line set up. One person would do one job, and one job only, all day long. And then he would pass it on to the next guy who would do the same thing. And so immediately we have a workforce, and now we have these factories, and it just exploded. In the woodworking world, furniture for the most part had been handmade, mostly in small shops. Everything was done by hand. If you wanted to drill a hole, you had a brace and a bit. If you wanted to cut something, you had a handsaw. And through innovation, all handwork was replaced by machines. You could now cut wood and make very thin veneer. Dovetail machines could now cut drawer construction. Carving was automated. There were now carving machines. You didn't need a master carver that you only had to rely on in the past. Now we had machines that could do all of this. And so you have people that are coming in who now have a job working in these factories, so they have an income that's not based on agriculture, so they have an income, and so now they're able to buy products like furniture and all these other goods, and so it really raised the standard of living throughout the country. People could have money and be able to go out and buy tangible things. Plus, the girls on the farm. Now you had industries that were popping up in factories, started primarily with textile industries, and it spread to many other industries where if you were a young lady, you didn't have to stay on the farm. You could go into the city and you could get a job. So, lots of changes. The industrial age really began in England, and it was really copied over here in the United States very promptly. This was also called the Victorian era. It's a phrase coined from England. When Queen Victoria became Queen of England, she was 18 years old, and there was so much, because she was such a young queen and brought new ideas to England, and all these other things were developing that I just spoke of in England as well, first in England and then transferred over here to the United States. And so things that were happening in England were just, fashion and architecture and really everything that they were doing in England, we were going to copy over here as well. Families were really quite large at that time, especially for upper and middle class, and they had servants if you were upper middle class. That's true for the Cappon family. Families did things together. Dinner time was always very important for the family. You'd sit down with the family and you'd have a formal dinner, and it'd be a time for everybody to get together, chat, talk about the day and the day's events and things that were going on in their lives. Well, the Cappons took it one step further. They also had an organ in their dining room. And not only would they sit around and tell stories, they would also read scripture at every mealtime, and that carried on for many generations. You would read scripture at the dinner time, probably before and after, and they would go a step further. They would get out and sing hymns, played out on the organ. So they did spend a lot of time together. Other fun things that the Victorians did, they would play cards and play games together as a family. Telling stories was important. They loved having picnics. And a very popular thing to do during the Victorian period was having picnics in cemeteries. Think about it. I mean, a cemetery looks, it's usually kept up. Got a lot of nice shade trees, it's beautiful. Hey, let's go visit the relatives. I'm not sure that the Cappons did that, but that was a pretty common practice back at the time. It was also a good time to be dead. At least if you wanted to keep in touch with the living. Spiritualism and seances and worship and healing services were very popular during the Victorian era. Now again, I can't say, and Deb, I don't know if you've ever run across any of this with the Cappon family participating in any seances or not, but it's a very, very popular thing to do. Mark Twain, Queen Victoria, Mary Todd Lincoln, these are all popular people at the time that had taken seances very seriously. Here in Michigan, we had Sojourner Truth was a black spiritualist and a leader at that time. It was a very, very popular thing to do. And last but not least, at least for the Cappon family, the house was restored in 1902, but in the year 1903, the Jennison Electric Park opened. So several miles to the west of their home, they could enjoy Jennison Electric Park. Victorian homes at this time were meant to impress. They were great in size and had extensive ornamentation. There were two very distinct Victorian styles of architecture. There were others as well, but the first main two, the first was the Italian, which is what the Cappon house is. It was modeled after Italian country manners. It had low-pitched, flat roofs, eaves supported by corbels, tall first-floor windows, 2 to 4 stories high, entrances that had double doors, and it was a home that would be built in symmetry, with everything balanced and was equal. It had imposing cornice across the top and pedimented doors and windows, and you can see a little bit of that window over there. All those pediments and all that molding around each window would really make it an outstanding feature. The second popular style of architecture at this time was the Queen Anne style. we often hear them referred to as the painted lady. It was an asymmetrical design. It had a lot of turrets and wraparound porches, very steep roofs, and lots of ornaments and color. It was like taking the Italian and stepping it up one. Very extreme decoration. There's very fine examples of both styles here today in Holland. Once you're inside, rooms were very cluttered with all the incidental bric-a-brac setting around on all kinds of surfaces. As you'll soon see, as you know, the furniture of Victorian furniture is overly exaggerated sometimes. Well, the whole interior of the house was kind of that way. These people would collect things, knickknacks, and photographs, and it was all on display. The windows, they had large windows, but they were all hidden behind very heavy drapes. And that was to keep the light out, because the light would fade the furniture, the carpet, the walls, and so for the most part, the windows would be covered, or mostly covered during the day to keep the light out. So you'd have these rooms that were very dark and very subdued, lots of dark wood, and really kind of set a mood. Walls were covered with large figured paper, and the furniture itself was substantially built. I mean, you needed 2 men and a boy just to move a table across the room. Very heavy. We had dark shades of upholstery. And so this made up the interior of a house like the Cappon house. The Cappon house was built in 1873. It was finished in 1874. Today it's refurbished as it was in 1902. So there's a 28-year time period there. So it's a little hard to talk about furniture, because from when it was originally built to what you had in 1900, there's 28 years of change that took place. And I'm sure the people that did the restoration really had a lot of work in trying to figure out exactly what it looked like in 1902. One other really great invention that came about during the Industrial Revolution that really helped this family was the carpet sweeper. How many of you would think of that? Can you imagine if you had to clean your carpets and you had no carpet sweeper? We can thank Melville Bissell, who started selling them in 1889. So before that, if you had carpets in your house, what did you do? You had to roll them up, take them outside, and beat them with a rug beater. Now, what they did with the really big rugs, I don't know. But again, that's an invention. There's so many inventions that came out of this time period that we just kind of take for granted. Let me give you just a little bit of furniture history, because we're going to talk about the furniture in this house. Let me back up and tell you a little bit about the furniture and how Grand Rapids became the furniture city. If you've ever flown in a plane and you're leaving Grand Rapids and you look out the window and you see all the nice patchwork of all the fields and the woods and the homes and the buildings, you know, it's pretty impressive. But then try to imagine that being just one immense forest, nothing but trees. That's the way Michigan looked about 1830-ish, when the lumber era really started. There were some small towns, scattered here and there. But for the majority of the state of Michigan, it was covered with trees. And so that's where the railroad came in. It became so important because now you had a way, and that's really how the railroad came to Michigan. You had an industry, logging and forestry was the #1 industry in Michigan at the turn of the 19th century. So now you had railroads that would come in that would be able to go into this interior and bring logs out to the ports. The two major ports for shipping lumber was Saginaw and Muskegon. Those were the two major ports. There were others later, of course, but and so the network of railroads really became important to bring all this wood out. The railroad came to Grand Rapids in 1857, and so that really changed transportation here too. Grand Rapids was a small town, I don't know if you call it a city. So now you could go to the east, you could go to New York in 2 to 3 days, where before it took 2 to 3 weeks. So again, it just made such a huge change. So Grand Rapids was somewhat in its infancy. They built new factories, so they could start an industry, starting from scratch, build a brand new factory. We had the river for water power. We also had steam engines to power these factories. And with all these latest inventions that were being made that took out the handwork, you had all this new equipment that could be brought into these factories. And so the factories really became kind of state of the art at that point. And so they had to compete with other companies in New York and New York State, in Cincinnati and Chicago, a few other places around the country. And so that really gave them an opportunity to excel. So Grand Rapids really accomplished a machine-made, middle-market group of furniture for the United States versus the hand craftsmanship that we saw in New York. So that definitely lowered all the prices and made furniture available to the middle class. Very little furniture was produced in Grand Rapids before 1862. There was one company, Winchester Brothers, just a few employees, and by 1863, Nelson and Matter, it's a name you might know, was one of the largest manufacturers in Grand Rapids, took over that small business, built their factories, and started producing furniture. So within just a few years, the largest companies in Grand Rapids were Berkey and Gay, you may have heard, Nelson and Matter, and the Phoenix Company. Those were the three main large companies, and there were many others that followed in other companies that grew to be quite large themselves. Berkey and Gay, at that time, when they were just coming started, they built a 6-story factory. They had 5 buildings, but their tallest building was 6 stories high, just to build furniture. Well, Nelson and Matter was a competitor of theirs, and a couple years later they had a fire and they lost one of their factories. So they immediately started to rebuild, and they built it 7 stories high, plus a basement. So there was a lot of competition, as you can see. Another very interesting thing with Nelson and Matter, they were the first company to use photography for promoting furniture. Up until that time, when you had a furniture salesman going out on the road to sell furniture, he had a suitcase, like, huge, that would include miniatures of the furniture that the companies would be making. And he would have to lug those things around on the train and show these miniatures to whoever he was selling it to. Well, now we have this new concept. And Nelson and Matter, they set up their own photography department and started producing catalogs. And again, very revolutionary at the time. Many factories, many furniture companies own tracts of timber, of lumber. They would go out and buy, like Nelson Manor, they went out and bought 400 acres of forest to use. And so they, especially the large companies, would build furniture starting with the trees. They'd go out and cut the trees in the forest. That would, and then take it all the next steps, transporting it to Holland, where they would cut it into boards. Then they would have to put all these boards into dry kilns and dry all the lumber. That was a huge operation within itself, just preparing the wood to build furniture. Hand carving was an art of the old world, and it was very slightly developed in Grand Rapids at the beginning. And veneer was hardly used either, because it was new technology that we really didn't. All these immigrants that came were primarily farmers, and mostly farmers. They didn't bring all these skills. Those skills were back in Boston and New York. But it didn't take too long before they would be able to adapt. Black walnut and cherry were the main woods that were used. Maple and ash were also used, and sometimes these lighter woods would be stained to simulate walnut. Many of the pieces of furniture of Victorian era had marble tops. You see a lot of that. All the marble would have been imported either from Italy, from Vermont, or from Tennessee. And marble tops were really a necessity and a high piece, high quality of furniture. The Grand Rapids companies didn't promote brands aggressively, not their own brands. They would band together, and they came up with a label that said Grand Rapids made. There was such an emphasis on the quality of the product that was coming out of Grand Rapids that they all banded together and formed the Grand Rapids Furniture Association and would market their product as exclusively from Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids Furniture Market started in 1878, and most of the companies did not have identifier marks on them. That's why today it's difficult to say which company made which piece of furniture. So, Ricky, you want to give me a slide here? One way we can identify furniture, this is a section of a drawer showing a hand-cut dovetail. They're usually not spaced equally, and they're a little rough, little crude. It would take a skilled craftsman all day, probably 9 hours, maybe 10, to build 20 drawers a day. Then along came some equipment. Somebody got smart and devised a new dovetail machine, which would take all that hand labor that you were producing and be able to cut a dovetail that looks like that. And that goes back again 1870s, probably when that machine was first invented. And that type of construction is still used today, and it's still very popular. And but it's relatively new, because of technology that came out of the Industrial Revolution. There was another one. Berkey Furniture was the next one. Not to be outdone, somebody else came up with another idea. This is a different type of dovetail construction. Actually, this is a little simpler. There's another one that has like a scallop around each one of these pins. And so it was very fancy. And the Nelson Matter Company exclusively used this type of construction. And so that's one way that we can identify pieces of furniture and know that that Nelson Matter made these pieces of furniture. Now, all the pins, those are not doubles, but those are machined into the end of the drawer front, and then the boring of the drawer sides has to match. But it revolutionized just one part of furniture construction, building drawers. I mean, you went from one qualified person building 20 to maybe 100 a day. And that was true for so many different operations as well. Holland's first furniture company started in 1886, and again, they owned a sawmill in Kalkaska, and very industrious people. They bought the woodlot, they built the dock in Makatawa to receive the lumber, and then started their operations. By the 1880s, 1890s, Holland had 5 furniture companies of pretty good size. A big company would have been like 450 employees. Some of those were a little less than that, maybe. And these companies soon branched out and had offices and showrooms in all the major markets: Chicago, New York, Boston, and they even shipped products to Europe, which, for a new company, new industry, it's kind of nothing was impossible at that time. Factories were burnt. They were built. They were burned down. Companies merged. It was really a messy industry. They've continued to expand. They brought talent in from the East Coast and from Europe, and the companies continue to grow and just get better and better. And it soon became known as Grand Rapids became the Furniture City. Holland really had a big part in that as well, with the factories that we had here and the quality of products that were being built at that time. Victorian furniture. This is taken in the Cappon house. First piece that you're going to see, did I do that? Did I touch it? Okay, it's back. Okay. Every fashionable house would have this. It's a hall tree. This thing is at least 8 foot tall. You come into the main doorway, and the maid would greet you, and you can see on the top of that little maple marker on top is a little dish, and you'd give the maid your card, and she would announce your presence when you came. You could hang up your coat and hat, put your umbrella in the stand, and everything was nice, neat, and tidy. Again, this thing has a large arch at the top and lots of other details that are added to it. But this would be found in every home. It didn't have a front closet. We had a hall tray. styles of Victorian furniture, there's really three different classifications of Victorian furniture because it's, you know, it's a long time period. So we kind of break it down into three different time periods, and there's different elements. The first is Renaissance Revival. That was probably the oldest style, where designers would rely on past designs from the ancient days, from the Greeks and the Romans, and incorporate that into furniture designs. And they kind of took it the extra mile. They would have lots of overlays, like you see up here. These overlays, and these are just some little carved fittings, or rosettes, excuse me. The second style was called Eastlake. It was Charles Eastlake was an interior designer in England, and he saw all this overburdened furniture that was being produced, and he wanted something that's much lighter in scale. So we'll see some really a combination of Renaissance Revival and Eastlake furniture. And also there's another movement at the time called the aesthetic movement. Again, it was paring the furniture down, stripping it of all you know, there's a saying in building a lot of this furniture, more is more. If you had a blank surface, man, you got to put something on there. So, yeah. Furniture wasn't just a functional necessity, but it also was a way of expressing one's taste, culture, and history. So I've kind of broken this down into the furniture in different categories. Rather than by the rooms, I kind of lumped furniture together so there's not as much redundancy, hopefully. So the first piece I have here are rocking chairs. The Cappon house has 5 rocking chairs in this house, which to me seems a little excessive. I mean, I like a rocking chair. Who doesn't? This one's kind of unique. I've seen one or two others like it, but the slats in the back are all suspended on a wire. You can see it a little bit through here. They're all threaded through this wire, so when you sit in it, the back conforms to your back, and as you move, the back moves as well. And so it's a very comfortable chair.
So where's that chair?
Where's that chair? It's in a bedroom. I believe it's the minus bedroom, possibly. I think that's
Trying to place it in the cancer.
yeah. It's in one of the bedrooms. Okay. I told you there were 5. Okay, here's 2 more. The one on the left is I think it's really kind of cool. It's made out of maple. It's a very low chair. It's probably more in the Eastlake family because of the ornamentation and the cane seat. It's a very low seat. And then compare that to the chair on the right. Very large chair. I would say that's kind of a gentleman's. I can see an old man sitting there smoking a cigar. The person that comes to mind is Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin, the great inventor, who invented all sorts of things, claimed that he invented the rocking chair. But that was kind of mixed. People have kind of said, nah, I don't think so. He probably really loved his rocking chair and wanted to take credit. I don't know. So I saw that and right away I thought, Ben Franklin. I think he'd be sturdy enough to hold it. 2 different styles. Okay, the next one. So, people had to keep improvising. There's rocking chairs and then there's rocking chairs. So this is number 4. this rocking chair really solved another problem. If you, if you've ever rocked in a chair, as we probably all have, the one problem with a rocking chair is they screw across the floor eventually. So there was a designer, inventor again at the time, who came up with an idea of a platform that would stay in place. And he came up with a sort of a sliding bar type mechanism that would let the chair move backwards and forwards, but it would stay stationary. And everybody loved it. That was huge. That was a big hit. And everybody wanted it. Well, he immediately patented his particular design. And many other people followed. Now this is a little different style, but you can see here the springs that are mounted to the base. You can scoot it around because it has casters, but it is stationary, and you have these springs on either side that allow it to rock back and forth. This chair, again, is a East Lake design. It's really beautiful. It has a upholstered seat and back in velvet. The seat is upholstered with springs. Extremely comfortable. We don't know who manufactured this. There's a Grand Rapids manufacturer called Wolverine Chair and Furniture Company that advertised patented rockers in 1887. So it kind of fits right in our time frame, but whether this is actually from that company or not, we don't know. Next. And here's still another version of a chair. Wicker. Wicker was extremely popular during Victorian era. People loved it because you could use it indoors and outdoors. It's a relatively cheap material, and you can paint it versus stain it, and it holds up really well. Again, there's a gentleman who came up with an idea of how you can weave rattan. Now, rattan has been around since Egyptians were using rattan to build furniture back in their day. But anyhow, this gentleman came up with an idea of how you can weave rattan and build furniture. And he was not in the Grand Rapids area, but he had a factory by the time when he died in the late 1800s. He had 1,000 employees in his factory. I mean, wicker was very, very important. And it was really great because you can be so decorative. This is a little bit of a restrained design, and I'm sure you've seen many decorated pieces. Go ahead. And this is a cradle, again, wicker. You can see all the little twirls and all the pieces that made this up. It's maybe not real clear in this picture, but there's a bar that goes up here and one on the other side. And again, it has all those twirling doodads on it. And it will swing. It swings back and forth. And extremely decorative. And it really holds up well. I mean, this is a very old cradle, but it still could be used today. I threw these chairs in again because of the cane. Cane, wicker, it's all kind of in the same category. Again, very popular. Again, these would be the later period, more of an East Lake design. It's much more subdued. The carvings are more flat, not any detail to them. But what I really wanted to emphasize was the caning. when you build chairs, a chair factory is different than a case goods factory because of the process that it takes to build those products and some of the machinery that you need. So, Grand Rapids, let me see, where am I? Grand Rapids Chair was a very large company in Grand Rapids. They made their own chairs, but they also contracted out to other companies, either making chair frames or supplied chair parts. Now, again, you can see that this would be kind of labor intensive to, all of these chairs were hand caned, individual pieces of cane. So in order to meet the market, they had a pretty good idea. They employed 300 boys and girls to weave these chair cane seats from the State Reform School in Lansing. Boy, you know, you got all these kids around. They need something to do. Okay, we've got a good project plan. So they employed these juvenile delinquents to, here's something that you can do. And maybe when you get out, you can continue doing it. Go ahead, Rudy. It's a slightly different style chair, but again, the same concept. Cane was just very popular at that time. It's great. It holds up really well, except if you have a 2-year-old grandson that decides to stand on it. That's not a real good plan. I can speak from experience on that one. Go ahead, Ricky. Again, another beautiful chair. There's, you know, quite a few. These are just side chairs that you would find kind of scattered throughout the house when you need an extra chair for some of the things. Often they're called hall chairs. If somebody's waiting in the hall to see Mr. Cappon. Again, very beautiful, very shallow carvings. Again, an East Lake design, very shallow. This would all be done by machine. This would not be hand carved in any fashion. None of this. It's all machine carved. Getting into the case pieces, I'm sorry, this is not a very good picture. So when you come into the hallway, this is a bookcase. This thing is, I think it's about 9 feet tall. It's original to the house. It's made by Berkey and Gay. We have some documents that say that. Let us know that. It has you know, all the bells and whistles, drawers on the bottom with locks, glass doors, huge pediment. Again, original bookcase. Cappons are big readers, and it's a very important, very impressive piece in the hallway. Most of this furniture, because it was so large and so heavy, all required casters. If you look at it, and this particular bookcase has double casters. You can't see it in this photograph, but it has double casters in each corner of the piece. And you'll see that on the chairs too. The chairs were so massive, the couches, all the pieces of furniture were so massive that everything primarily needed casters to it. If you got just a maid trying to clean her house with her business sweeper, you need to move a piece of furniture, it's good to have casters. Again, higher quality furniture would have porcelain casters. You'll also see wooden casters. Go ahead. Another very impressive piece is a secretary. It is in the, well, it used to be the office. It's now a sitting room. Again, this is probably one of the most beautiful case pieces that we have in the house because it has you have everything going for it. The portion of it is beautiful. It has inlays on all the doors and doors, and up here in the pediment as well. Another thing I'd like to mention on these drawers, and well, go on, I'll mention it another page. I'll find a better piece of furniture. Anyhow, this is the secretary. It has a pull-out shelf. All the main business of the day for the Cappon family would have been done here. They had all the records and notes, and we're able to do a lot of daily business from a piece like this, secretary. Another very beautiful case. This one's upstairs, very similar to the one I saw downstairs. It has all this marquetry inlaid. Now, when you make an inlaid panel, you have to first cut each individual piece out of one piece of veneer, which is probably 1/32 of an inch thick, and then you have to cut its reverse shape into the surface that you're going to mount it to. So you can see how labor intensive if each one of them is an individual. Each leaf is an individual piece of wood, and then you have to glue it in place and sand it. Takes an extreme amount of time. One other thing I'd like to mention is you'll notice on some of this furniture it's set in a burl panel. All the burl that I found in the furniture in the Cappon house has all been hand painted. What you'll find in more high-end furniture today, again, they changed they perfected the process, and we can now take a piece of burl, which is all knotty, and we can flatten that. You have to first, it's a very involved process where you have to soak it in glycerin and other chemicals, and then flatten it, dry it, flatten it, before you can actually apply it to a piece of furniture. So at this time, all your burls are really not burls. That's all been hand painted. Similar, right? Still, again, another beautiful case good. This is a bookcase upstairs. This piece drops down. This is the sitting room upstairs. This is a Nelson Matter piece. It's got all kinds of, it's got a curved glass door here for displaying things. This is the bookcase, mirror at the top. Kind of went all out in designing and decorating this. It's a very intricate brass hardware, and all of these carvings that you see applied have been applied. They're not actually carved into the piece of furniture. They were made separately and then were glued to the piece of furniture. Other details, nice details. The mirror is beveled. Those are all the extra little features that really make it a great piece of furniture. Okay. Again, I really like this piece. Again, we have a metal gallery up here. It's all punched out metal. There's the gallery. A lot of beadwork around the glass door and around the frame. And this shows it with the drop lid down. Did I do that, sir? I'm not sure if I'm doing that or not. Anyhow, it's a nice work surface. Children, when they were older, they could probably use this as a desk for homework, and all those little pigeonholes to stick various things in, paperwork, and then when you're done, you just close it. This is a very impressive piece. You'll find this piece in the parlor. Now, the parlor is a room in the house that was not used very often. Very, very special occasions would you go and sit in the parlor. And it's the type of room that you walk in there and you go, wow. Because this is all gold wallpaper, matched by the upholstery here. And look at the highly patterned floral carpet. It's wall carpet. And so up at the top, everybody, you know, today if you have a house and you have crown molding in it, that came standard, pretty much standard in a house like this back in the day. And that's a huge crown molding in the top. This piece is called a pier glass. It's really a focal point in the house. This measures 11 foot tall. The base of this is a cast iron mantle. It's cast iron, and then it's been painted and marbleized to appear as if it were marble. There was a coal fireplace. They burned coal, but the size of this mirror is just magnificent. This would have been custom made to fit this particular wall, and again, like I said, it's the focal point. And when you have the chandelier in the center of the room shining and reflecting in this large mirror, it's really a pretty outstanding piece. Again, there are columns on either side of the mirror that are all burled, and burled here, and cartouche coming up at the very top of this piece to finish it off and give you a pretty magnificent look. It's called a pier glass because in all your manor houses in England, all these large, huge mansions, the space between your windows were called piers. And all the piers, because they wanted, you know, these rooms were so dark and dingy, they would apply mirrors to wherever there was a pier. And so that concept was adapted here. Some of the ones in England are not quite as big as this. Some maybe are even larger, but that's where the concept came from. And it really makes a pretty outstanding piece. Then we come to the dining room. There's the emphasis, there's the organ, the dining table set for formal dining. This dining table is actually round. It's a round dining table. It has a single pedestal, and it has several fillers so that you can extend it in chairs. Okay. We've got some of these photographs a little bit on that. Just a piano again in the parlor. I think that just that one leg alone probably weighs 100 pounds. It's huge. Again, it would be a room that would not be used very often. Maybe the children are going to do a recital or whatever, but this again is another piece of the parlor. There's a group of small tables. This one happens to be in the hallway. I would call this an East Lake style. You see there's not a lot of decoration. I mean, the shape of the leg itself is scalloped, but it has cutouts in it rather than overlays, and it's somewhat simple, except it has a very thick top and an apron underneath it. It's a small table that sits in the hallway. Go ahead. And this is an example of an aesthetic piece of furniture. Again, later in the time period, when you're stripping away all of that ornamentation and we're going back to something that's really stripped down, not a lot of detail. It's a beautiful piece. Functions. It's got 2 shelves for all that bric-a-brac that the family had to display and base up on the top. It's a very nice example of aesthetic furniture. Go ahead. Again, beautiful chairs. A lot of the upholstery will have tufting in the back, buttons for tufting. It made a design statement, but it also helped keep the upholstery in place by adding all the buttons that kept everything from sagging and kept it in place. Again, lots of this is called a slips one eye right now. But again, burl appliques. This is sort of a ribbed velvet, I would say, in the fabric. Yeah, we're not sure who the manufacturer is in this. Another example of the same chair. The other chair was a side chair. This would be an armchair. You can see how sturdy these pieces of furniture have been made. It's going to be a very comfortable chair, a very comfortable seat. I just threw this in. It's a mantel clock. It's been painted black, and all the line work has been painted in with gold. Again, black furniture was very popular during the Victorian era. I don't have any other furniture to show you other than this clock. Again, during the Victorian era, Admiral Pere went and opened up Japan. Japan had been closed to the world for centuries, and he went in and formed a trade agreement, and that opened up, just made the world smaller again. We now had trade with Japan, and we had a lot of influences in furniture especially, and a lot of it would have been painted black and would have had Asian motifs decorated on it. Go ahead. Again, this is just another mantel clock, 8-day mantel clock that was in the dining room. Nothing too special about it, except, again, a lot of shelves were used for displaying your whatever it was that you wanted to display. Now, I often thought, man, if Hummels would have been around during the Victorian era, they would have loved it. It would have made even more money. Go ahead. Again, back in the parlor, beautiful matching chairs. These chairs, one thing, I'm not sure if you can see it. Maybe there's another picture of this chair, but that's the side chair. It's a, come on. I'm looking for the material, can't find it right now. But yeah, look at this chair too. This is bullion is what the actual name is. And maybe you remember seeing some of that. I remember seeing that on my grandmother's sofas on the fringe on the bottom.
I used to braid them.
You used to braid them?
Yeah.
Well, apparently somebody still does, because you can still buy that as a decoration. But I mean, again, if you're designing and building a chair and look, every surface is covered with something, what else can we do? Hey, I know, let's add this fringe to the bottom. But again, if you sit in these chairs, they're extremely comfortable. Well made, very comfortable. And this is a matching sofa. all the same fabric. It's a brocade fabric. And I think, boy, you know, between this wallpaper, this carpet, and that fabric, it's quite a wow factor. And it was meant to make you say, wow. Next. Also I don't know if you can see that from the last picture or not, but again, highly decorative. We have a lady here and a man here. These are not the Cappons, although maybe we could say that they were if you want to add the story, but no, they're not. They are not. They are, you know, generic man and woman, just to make it much more decorative. Beautiful. Fading couch, again, very popular at this point. Used for, you know, probably the most comfortable piece of furniture in the house. You know, that it's easy to sit on, to rest on. You need a nap, you need a 10-minute nap. You're gonna read a book. It's a great piece. This particular fading couch is one of the names that they call it. It's covered in leather with brass nailhead trim. Again, I would call this piece an inlaid. It has very limited decoration here, a little bit on this top of this arm, and a little on the feet, but I'm not sure why people don't have them today, except they probably take up too much room. Again, another smaller settee in the sitting room. Very beautiful piece. Has all the same elements to it. I don't want to be too repetitive here, so go ahead. Again, that other sofa had the man and woman figures, and this has another. It was a common element to use. So here's another carved figure. The top center part of the chair rail also has rosettes and more carving, and as you see, every surface has some kind of a detail on it. And for this particular furniture, this is all machine carved. It's not hand carved. Go ahead. This is a kind of an unusual, like, again, I think it's maybe Eastlake, except, I mean, why do you really need this piece here? And everything else is pretty flat. Another burl panel, some rosettes, but these are somewhat three-dimensional. There's not a lot of you can do, but they are raised. It's kind of a key. It's just a little bench, and threw a cushion on it, and it has a lift lid. Am I doing that? Okay. I believe this is a Chanel fabric on it. It looks really oh boy. Anyhow, let me try to speed up here. This is another fantastic invention that we found during the Victorian period. Bed springs. How many of you think about your bed springs in your bed at night? Well, prior to this, everybody's bed was either ropes or wooden slats. And then you had a mattress that was maybe 3 or 4 inches thick, filled with straw, possibly cotton, horsehair, whatever. And this was first invented 1870, when a gentleman came up with the concept of taking these springs, connecting them together, and making a bed spring. Revolutionary. Again, once that became available, I mean, it was universal. And the problem with that particular type of a bed spring, as you know, you sit on it, and you know, if there's another person in the bed, you're gonna either bounce them out or they're gonna move as well. So a lot of things have changed since then. Again, beautiful. These are beautiful beds. Lots of burl panels. extremely high. This is a 12-foot high ceiling, so you can see extremely large piece.
Is that painted?
Beg your pardon?
Painted?
It is. All the burl panels on all the furniture that I've found has been painted. It's imitated. Every bedroom needed a washstand. This is just a chest of drawers. And here's your pitcher and your bowl. And I believe this is in Abraham Lincoln's bedroom. No? This looks like shade. Well, here's the sponge so you can wash off whatever dust you had from the day. Go ahead. Again, mandatory piece of furniture in a bedroom. This is in the maid's bedroom. Hers is a little more simple. But you have a mirror and you got your wash basin. Go ahead. Mirrors, again, very elaborate. This is the maid's bed. We saw some pretty elaborate beds before. Well, she had a nice tall headboard as well, but it was a lot simpler. And I believe this figure was made by Holland Furniture. I'm not sure of that, right? I believe so. Very, very, okay, this again is a beautiful piece of furniture. It's Eastlake design. Some people would refer to Eastlake as cottage furniture. This is made out of maple. It's usually lighter woods. We refer to this as the Abraham Lincoln bedroom. No, it was not the Abraham Lincoln. It was Abraham Lincoln Cappon. And this was his bedroom. Again, now I'm jumping around from different bedrooms, but again, another bureau to be used in a bedroom. A lot of drawer space. All the bedrooms also had closets, which is kind of another new feature in these homes. But there's also a lot of storage space here, and every bedroom would always have a mirror for your dressing. Go ahead.
Claire, this isn't furniture, but the wallpapers, are they reproduction or are they original wallpapers?
The wallpaper is a reproduction of the originals that were found in the house. And they were replicated.
That's why they look so good.
Yeah. So it's new wallpaper, but it's based off from what was found in the house. Again, this is Lavina's bed. Lavina was the last Cappon person that lived in this house. Again, she has a very high headboard. All this molding is applied. This appears to be oak. So I believe this is maybe a Holland Furniture company. I'm not sure. But again, it has a lot of detail to it. Go ahead. Again, just another shot of that wicker crib, and I can see these posts that thing pivots and swivels on. Okay. Some of these are out of sequence. There's the maid's bedroom once again. It's a little incomplete. The maid's bedroom is a little incomplete. We could use a little more help there. So if anybody cares to go through. This is an Eastlake bedroom again. Shot of the detail on the headboard. Go ahead. Again, bedroom piece. This is a spare bedroom upstairs. Marble tops. Nice carving detail. Go ahead. And again, this is a different piece with a backsplash and sides. All again in marble. Again, this was found in the second bedroom. Abraham Lincoln's dresser, we saw that before. Go on. Abraham Lincoln's bed, you can see the carving detail here. It's just a simple panel that's got the stool cut out and then applied. So much simpler. Yeah, there you go. Very, very simple design, just applied to it. And we see that. we've seen that slide as well. That's the maid's piece. Again, just a close-up detail of some of the carving on top of the mirror. Don't have the rest of the piece, but it replicates the carving on the bed. The Cappons were the only family that lived in this house. And Lavina lived in this house until 1974. She was the daughter of the second family. And she never married. She lived in this house until 1974, and it was sold to the city, I believe, in 1980. Restoration began from 84 to 1990. It took a long time for the architect to do all this work, do all this research work, but they did a tremendous job. And thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Claire. That was a really, really interesting. I learned so much, and I thought I knew a lot about this. So we're really close to the end of our time that we've allotted. But if anybody has any questions, we can ask a couple for Claire to share his wisdom. Anybody have any questions or comments? Of course you do, Rick.
Oh boy.
Where did the hardware come from?
I suspect that the hardware probably came from Keela Brass in Grand Rapids. Keela Brass was, again, came up when the furniture industry was developed. Keela Brass became a hardware manufacturer. And they were a huge manufacturer of traditional style hardware in Grand Rapids and had a fabulous line. So they were in Grand Rapids. And yeah.
I noticed going through the Cappon house, a lot of ceilings were wallpapered. Was that typical at that time period?
What?
The ceilings were wallpapered.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And more than likely, when they were doing the research work, they were stripping off layers of wallpaper throughout the house, and they replicated it, to that time period of 1902. So, yeah, these rooms were just really, you needed sunglasses to walk into or something. Go ahead.
So in arranging the rooms, like you've done, did you have photographs, or how did people decide which pieces went in which rooms? Were they there when the city acquired it? There's got to be some rhyme or reason to who put it all together, and how did they decide how it went?
Well, it wasn't me. But Deb Waite over there, who is an expert on the Cappon house.
Come to the Cappon house. First of all, there's a restoration exhibit right out in the lobby, so you take a look at that.
Deb is
If you go to the Cappon house, Deb can answer some of the questions, but you come and you will hear a lot more of the details.
Natalie was more the expert, I'm the family historian, but I know that at the time of Isaac's death, they did an inventory. And so we know what pieces were there. Of course, they probably rearranged rooms, especially upstairs, because we don't know exactly where the children stayed, because every time somebody moved out, oh, I want that room, and they would move around. We know that the boys' room was always off the children's parlor. They were kind of separated, and the girls divvied up the other rooms. And we know probably the Levinas was that way, because it was still that way probably when they bought the house. Built the house. No, when the city bought the house, her room was still there because she was still living there.
And that was one of her sister's rooms before. She was one of the younger daughters, so she inherited that room.
And again, the house changed, from 74 to 02, and some of the rooms actually. Isaac Cappon had an office originally in the front part of his house, which is now a sitting room.
I have a have a question on the painting, because I've heard about vinegar painting. Is that what was the technique that was used to make the burl wood look burl wood?
No, it would have been aniline dyes, which are powders. It's a very fine powder, and you mix it with lacquer, I believe, and it takes a really skilled person to, simulate burl. And you're working with different shades of these aniline dyes, and it's a complicated process, and it takes a real skilled eye to do it. And then it will be covered over with probably lacquer or possibly some other kind of top coat.
Is it a paint or a stain?
It's a stain. It would be a stain. Yeah. Yes.
We didn't see any kitchen furniture. Was everything kind of built in at that time, or were there still independent pieces of furniture that were brought in?
Yeah. Well, I felt that was more Unitarian.
And we do have kitchen furniture.
There is some kitchen furniture. You got to go visit the house. Again, Deb Wake, they did have counters where they would be able to prepare things, but Deb, you want to add anything?
There is a prep kitchen, and then there's a kitchen, and then there's a pantry. In the prep kitchen, we have a portion of the original that's down in the cellar, but they reproduced it, and it is a wall counter that went around, and then there was a sink later added, and it's got really unique kind of half-wall wood that's interspersed with different woods. It's very cool. But the things that are actually in the kitchen are reproductions or furniture of the era, because the kitchen burned. And so Loina, in her time, turned the kitchen into a garage, turned the dining room into the kitchen, and turned Isaac's old office into the new dining room. So when they restored it, they put everything back. So they had to, purchase furniture from that era.
Yeah.
The houses are open Fridays and Saturdays until mid-August. Please come for a tour. They start at 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock.
1:15, 12:15, 1:15, 2:15.
So come and see the houses. They're really remarkable. And with the Cappon house, you get to go to the Settler's house, which is just down the street. And it's basically the haves and the have-nots at the same time period, because that was the working class home that survived the historic fire in 1874, where the Cappon house was a rebuilt house because they lost their home. We're going to have to wrap it up.
Or come to the ice cream social.
Well, that's coming to the Cappon house, yes. The
Exactly.
ice cream social, which is July 13th, and that's free, and you get tours of the house, and you get to learn all sorts of activities. Please help me in thanking Clare Heyboer for the really interesting talk. Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming. Please fill out your forms, and we really would appreciate just taking a few minutes to do that, and you can drop them off on the table on your way out. We also have the Cappon 150 anniversary celebration activity brochures in the front that you can pick one up. We have lots of things going through the end of the year. Thank you for coming.